Today, we are going to go ahead and do our very first 3-round rookie mock draft. We're talking Superflex, we're talking tight end premium, and we are going to be going one round deeper than we and just about anyone we see have been going. So very excited to get into all of that and more. And welcome into the Dino Construction Podcast. Justin, joined by David and JP here. Pretty excited to be doing this 3-round mock draft against Superflex, tight end premium. We're going to be doing at least one, probably two more before the NFL draft. We'll be dropping one pretty much the day after the NFL draft ends. So we're stoked to be getting into rookie time. This is dynasty time, boys. So all that being said, we don't want to spend too much time at the beginning really talking about it. Just want to say, hit that like, hit that subscribe. We're at about 11% of our view time recently has been from subscribers. So if you're watching, you've watched a couple, have not hit that button, easiest way to help out the channel. Hope you like our graphics we put together. Really would help us monetize. We get a few more subscribers. So really appreciate it, guys. So after that shameless plug, we're going to get right into our draft. We are going to have JP taking the 101, David the 102, I'll take the 103, and then we just keep going in that order, so on and so forth, not serpentine at all. So we're going to hop right in. We'll do a first round recap when we get to the end of the first round. All that being said, I think people just want to know, who is it, JP? Tell us the secret that we're taking that is who everybody is taking at this point.
Taking Jeremiyah Love out of Notre Dame. He is an incredible running back prospect. I expect he's going to be top 15. I think he could go top 10 in the NFL draft. The hit rate on running backs taken that high is just through the roof. I mean, these guys, they almost never miss. He's an uber athletic player. You see him breaking off big plays all the time. This year, he averaged 6.9 yards per attempt. That's a phenomenal number. He had 18 rushing touchdowns, so he's a great goal line player. And this year he had 1.84 yards per route run. Like, that's nearing wide receiver levels right there. So incredible receiving back, goal line back, very athletic. I mean, he's checking all the boxes that you want to see. The missed tackles forced per attempt for his career being at 0.31 is a very high number as well. When you reach 0.3 levels, that's like incredibly impressive. You don't see that happen a whole lot. And even the yards after contact per attempt, 4.5 this year, that is ridiculous. So I don't think I'm hesitating with any one-on-one I have this year. It's going to be Jeremiyah Love for me.
I do think it gets a little interesting after this. Pretty much chalk right now has been the 3 wide receivers in whatever order you please. Kind of think Dante Moore going back to school changes that a little bit, though. Now Fernando Mendoza is the only quarterback we have any real confidence in. So I'm going to go ahead and take the newly crowned national champion quarterback Fernando Mendoza. Expect him to be the 101 to the Raiders in the real NFL draft. It's Superflex, man. This guy's got the tools. He's going to get the opportunity. I'm not super high on him. I think he's a pretty decent early quarterback. I don't know that he's like, a top 101 pick we've had. We've had some great ones lately, but his size, his athleticism, not elite athleticism, but athletic enough. He's got a big arm. He's a really smart guy. I think this is the big stat that gets me. 3 games this season, 90+ completion percentage with 4 or more touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Did that 3 times. That's crazy. Anyways, I think this is going to start happening more and more in mock drafts, and I do think this might become regular pick here at 102 is Fernando Mendoza. I guess I'm just really interested to see how it plays out. I just think the quarterback scarcity pushes him up a little bit.
Yeah, Fernando Mendoza, honestly, it's just a scarcity thing. I think we will see pushing him up. Because if Moore was here, and, we'll see what happens with other quarterbacks that we'll talk about today and where they go. Because if they go early enough to landing spots that we like, that scarcity argument might not be quite as dire. There's a non-zero chance Mendoza is the only first-round quarterback drafted. I wouldn't put that as the likely outcome, but I certainly would not be shocked if he's the only early first-round quarterback drafted. And this is Superflex. I don't hate that pick, except for the fact that it makes me have to put my stamp on wide receiver 1, something I was not really looking forward to having to do. So at wide receiver 1, at the 103, I'm going what has been pretty much chalk all season, and I will go Jordyn Tyson, wide receiver, Arizona State. So Tyson here, It's as simple as I'm going to let the NFL tell me he's not the wide receiver one. I know his 2025 production was not quite where we were hoping it would be, just compared to previous seasons. Touchdowns, yardage, counting stats were down. Yards per route run, so some of the advanced metrics also down. But even still, the yards per route run of 2.37 in a bad offense. The first downs per route run, 0.12. Still, these statistics are not bad. They're just not dominant like we've seen from him in the past at other points in his career. The 2024 season, 3.04 yards per route run. I'm just going off of the fact that NFL teams are going to forgive him for this down year. If he does come in at that 6'2", 195, I think that's a great size in this NFL. And I think he's definitely just a young guy where the sky will be the limit. So still my wide receiver one, although I do understand having different opinions potentially.
I do think he's the highest upside wide receiver in this class, just the raw talent, the size, and what we saw from him just last year. I don't blame you at all. So honestly, I'm probably there where I'd take him. But with the next pick, I'm going to take one of these other wide receivers, and that's going to be USC wide receiver Makai Lemon. This is a player that checks every single box except for just the one that he wasn't born with the right stuff, right? He's just a little bit smaller. The athleticism isn't like through the roof, but he's legitimately checking every box for me otherwise. I mean, the yards per route run on his career being at 3.02, a lot of times that's player's best year is around that mark. That's his whole career. I don't think anybody else in this class has a career yards per route run above 3. So that's a extremely strong number. This year, he was forcing a missed tackle on 0.27 of his attempts. That's one of the best marks in this entire class as well. The contested catch rate being 66.7 this year at 5'11", 195 pounds is wildly impressive. There's a couple of players that have a higher mark than him in this class. They're guys that got 3-4 inches on him. So his ball skills, I've watched him play, and they've been very impressive. Also, when I watched him play, he's always creating more yards after the catch than is there. He just transitions from a receiver to a runner so quickly that I think he's just going to translate really well into the NFL. And if you're going to get a discount on him for being just a slot wide receiver, I'm going to take that all day because, I mean, we've seen slot wide receivers like JSN, Nick Buka, and Justin Jefferson, who was a college slot wide receiver, and they're great for fantasy. And what's cool is that this year he wasn't just a slot wide receiver. I think he can also be a flanker in the NFL. So I love his profile in almost every single way. I'm curious about the testing, but honestly, I don't really care about it for my evaluation too much.
Yeah, very tough for his size, highly productive. You know, you always love to see the leader in the class for yards per route run in the last year when he's a Power 4 school, big-time school, you know, high-profile guy. Feel pretty safe about that. I think he's got a very high floor. Definitely a big fan of his. And this, I believe, is the easiest pick in the draft currently. That could obviously change. 105 is just whatever receiver is left, or if Mendoza didn't go yet, it's Mendoza. In this draft, that receiver happens to be Carnell Tate. So, like, you guys can't even give me crap for taking an Ohio State receiver. They just left them for me. Not my fault. I don't know how I sort these three. It kind of changes every day. So, if you have a preference, that's great. If not, just kind of let the process play out. Tate is the tallest of the group. I believe he's going to come in taller than Tyson. I know they're listed at the same here. I think Tate probably has him by an inch or two. Over 3 yards per out run this year. Pretty good number. Just some things from when I watch him at Ohio State, as someone who watches a lot of Ohio State football, obviously. He's just really good at like tracking the ball. And, you know, Howard did this a little. Sane did it a lot. He'd get a little underthrown on a deep ball, and he'd still pace himself well enough to fend off the defender, put himself in a really good spot to make the catch. His contested catch numbers support that. Led the nation in catches of 30-plus yards, no drops. So just, I know, like, the overall numbers aren't great. I think 875 yards this year might actually be his career high. You know, the overall production is not going to be tremendous just because he's been in some busy rooms. He's dealt with some injuries, and he's only a third-year player. But, man, the skill set is there, and we all know how Ohio State receivers do in the NFL right now. Just go ahead and look past the slightly lower counting stats and just trust that he's a good player, and just go watch him. He's fun to watch.
I definitely do trust that he is a good player. I definitely think with a landing spot where he is paired up with a skilled, talented QB, he very easily could be the wide receiver 2 in this class, wide receiver 1 in this class, and the 102 in this class, pretty universally. If he just gets a landing spot that is just so much better than everyone else's, and that first round draft capital that, of course, we expect. That being said, I think you could say the same thing about all three of those wide receivers. Whoever gets the best landing spot very easily could be the consensus 102 in wide receiver one of the class. That being said, I feel like I am kind of in a situation here with the very first pick in the draft in some ways, honestly. And I will be going wide receiver as well. I'm going to be going Denzel Boston, the wide receiver out of Washington. To me, it's just I'm not confident enough at QB at this point. QB could wind up being the 106. I don't know who that's going to be. It would probably be one of the two guys that we take in the next several picks here. If it is a QB, it could be the tight end 1. It could be the RB2. But out of the guys that I could take here, this is the one that I feel like is the safest pick here. It's a wide receiver that I believe will be a first round wide receiver in the NFL draft. He's got decent yards per route run, 2.44 this year. That first down per route run that a lot of people really care about as a metric, 0.12. And he's 6'3". Even if he comes in at 6'2", I'm pretty happy there. And he played with a lot of NFL guys early on. To me, it's just the direction I'm pretty much going to go until I get more information. And just in general, any first round wide receiver, I'm pretty much always willing to take the swing in it. Yeah, there's always the chance you get a Xavier Legette type, but Boston does not really have the profile of a Legette type.
If it were not for Carnell Tate being in this class, I would call him probably the best wide receiver ball skills wise. His 77% contested catch rate. He's very, very impressive with the ball in the air and winning it. So, yeah, I do think he's going to be a first-round pick as of now, so cannot blame you there. I'm going to take his teammate with the next pick in Jonah Coleman at running back. And this is a player that we saw really, really popped in our metrics when we were looking at him as a potential running back last year. But he did return this year. He had some issues with injury. I mean, if you look at if you're watching on YouTube, his numbers on screen, if you look at his career versus 2025 for the advanced numbers, they're almost all better in his career. The missed tackles force per attempt is at 0.31 on his career. It was down to 0.22 this year. I do think that's an injury thing. The yards after contact per attempt and also 10-plus yard runs per attempt, they're all down. So I do think that's mostly due to the injury. The one thing that I do like to see that took a step forward is his ability as a receiver. 1.73 yards per route run. Like I was talking about Jeremiyah Love's yards per route run being phenomenal. Jonah Coleman's isn't that far behind for this year. So it's kind of like the Cam Scatabo thing for me last year, right? Talking about a guy who can get all the goal line work. 34 career touchdowns. He had 15 this year. And you got a guy who's getting receiving work. So you give me those two things, and I'm going to love that player almost every single time, especially when they have the size to go along with it at 226 pounds is what he's listed at. So, if you look at the advanced numbers, like I said in his career, as a runner strictly, he's pretty impressive there as well. So this is somebody that I have as my RB2 clearly, and I'm happy to take him, and I think he could be really good for fantasy if he gets the correct landing spot.
Yeah, I've been high on Coleman for a while myself. His junior season, a lot better than his senior season, like he said. Would have loved to have seen him fully healthy. I think he injured like a knee about halfway through the season. I don't think you can give that full credit for what happened this year, but I think it definitely played a role. If he's healthy, though, if he's back to his junior year form, I think he's going to be a really nice pick. Kind of like a Doug Martin kind of ish. Is that too old? Most people still know who he is, right? I hope I'm not that old, am I? Anyways, I felt pretty good about who I'm taking at this spot based on the tiers. I think there's a couple other players that you might be able to argue, but I'm going to go ahead and take the tight end 1 in this class, being that it's a 175 tight end premium. I do think we have a first round tight end in the NFL draft, and I think that tight end is Kenyon Sadiq. I don't think it's quite as far between him and the next group of tight ends as maybe some people think, as maybe the NFL draft capital will show. Sadiq's just a freak, like a super freak athlete. 6'3", 245. He's going to blow up the combine if he tests. He's probably going to go top 20, 25-ish. Just depends on where you want to take him. Again, his stats weren't that great. Only 560 receiving yards this year, which, for a tight end is not terrible. But for a guy you're talking about as a top 20 pick in the NFL draft, you maybe expect a little more. Warren Bowers, those guys all had really productive seasons to go with their athleticism and their size. It does worry me a little bit about him. But I think with the draft capital and what we've seen in athleticism, this is just a ceiling pick. And at this point, that's kind of what we're looking at. There's not a lot of safety left in this draft, which is a little scary, but kind of fun too. So we're already in kind of a get your guy territory, and I'm going to shoot for some ceiling here. Take Kenyon Sadiq, who I think will be tight end 1 for us.
Very likely would have been my pick there. This is a difficult part in the draft where, again, you said it's kind of crazy to think, but in some ways we are kind of in that like shoot your shot, get your guy territory. We will recap at the end of the first round when we feel like we've already kind of touched on some tiers, but I don't hate taking the high athletic upside tight end. I don't really want to go quarterback at this point. So given that, and I'm not confident in a wide receiver being a first round wide receiver, there's definitely guys that could go in the first round. There's definitely guys that could also fall out of it. I'm going to end up going running back, and I'll be going from Nebraska, Emmett Johnson. Now, this is a guy that I don't remember which of you started texting about him in the group chat first, but y'all have been texting about him for months and months and months and months. So he's had an incredibly explosive season. We're talking about like 1,800 total yards. We're talking about 370 yards on 46 receptions. So that's a guy that can do it in the passing game. Now he's coming in at 5'11", 200 pounds. So we'll see what he does at the combine, right? Like maybe he goes for speed and he comes in at 190. Maybe he tries to hit that 200 because people are worried about that size, but we're not worried about size anymore, right? Someone between 190 and 200 pounds, like in this day's NFL, if they're electric, we think that they're able to do it. So it really just comes down to draft capital for this guy, right? Projections are kind of 3rd to 5th round. If he goes in the 3rd round or late 2nd, we're all, to the moon. But if he goes in the 4th or 5th round, and that's what David was saying, there's not really a safe pick here, right? We all love Emmett Johnson. It's just the question about where is he going to be going in the NFL draft. But we all believe in him as a talent if he goes to an offense that can use him correctly. Truly an electric guy. So very, very happy to hopefully see him get a great NFL landing spot.
Yeah, it was when he played against UST. I texted Dave and I said, wow, this might be my favorite running back to watch in this class. He's just consistently getting more than what's blocked for him. It's truly impressive. You watch his highlights. I just really love him, and his vision, his patience, I think is just amazing. So if he's RB2 in this class by the time the draft comes around for us, I would not be so surprised. Now, with the next pick here in the draft, I am going to go to the quarterback position and take who I think is going to be the QB2 in this class, and that is Ty Simpson of Alabama. The end of the year for him was not great, but looking at it this season as a whole, in the Power 4, he was 7th in passing touchdowns. And I don't know if you guys know how Alabama's season went, but their running game, it was not good. Not good at all. The wide receivers, it thought it was going to be phenomenal with Ryan Williams in his 2nd year. He had some big drop problems. And I'm looking at the quarterbacks that had the most passing touchdowns, and his drop percentage is 8.3, which is higher than anybody else above him. I mean, Mendoza had a drop percentage of 2.8. It's crazy, the difference right there. So the team was not quite the Alabama team that we've come to expect. He had to be relied on a lot without a running game, and he's a first-year starter. And for him to still do what he did, I think is impressive. He's mobile enough. Garrett Nussmeier's prospect profile, and he had negative rushing yards, so he's not that low level of immobile here. So he's at least checking that box for me. But I do think that the fact that he was told that all around he had a first-round grade from every NFL team, that's at least a good sign for now. That's never a guarantee, but if he is in the first round, I think taking him here at the 110, I'll be pretty happy.
Yeah, if he indeed goes in the first, this is a great pick, and I think he'll probably climb up a bit. I think he's a good prospect. I think it was the right decision for him to come out, but I just don't think he's quite ready. So if you do take him with a pick, don't count on him for production year 1. At least I don't think you should. A little concerned with how few reps he's taken in college. You just got to see what happens live to know how to adjust to it. And I think we've seen over the years, especially recently, that experience at quarterback is really important. I'm not saying that means he's going to be a bust. I'm just saying be patient with him if you take him. That's all. I think there's one more receiver who could go in the first round. I don't know that it's definitely. I feel a lot a lot more confident in Boston going in the first than I do the guy I'm about to take. But I still think he's got a shot. And that guy's KC Concepcion from Texas A&M. He's a third-year wide receiver, spent his first 2 years at NC State, really almost exclusively out of the slot there, but still had some really high production, had over 800 receiving yards his freshman year, and I think had a lot of rushing yards his freshman year as well. But then he transferred to Texas A&M, and he still plays some slot, but mostly he's playing outside, about 2/3 outside, 1/3 inside, which I just love to see for this guy. I was worried he was going to be a slot only guy, not just showing versatility that he can move outside, but that he can live outside. I think that's great. Had 2 punt return touchdowns, just playmaking ability with the ball in your hands. I think that's awesome. Very physical for his size, kind of like Makai Lemon when we talked about him. He might be a little smaller, but he's still a very physical player. Can survive on the outside, maybe will still play mostly slot at the NFL level. But man, this guy's great with the ball in his hands, and I still think he can play in some 2 wide receiver sets. So I think he's a pretty good pick here, given the uncertainty we're encountering already.
Anytime somebody can do it in the SEC, I just value it a little bit higher than just about anywhere else in the country. Big Ten, SEC players that perform there. It's just, if you compare it to anywhere else, like, it's just not the same. So I really do think, you look at the body of work that he's put together there, it stands pretty comparable to what we saw from Boston. It's just, this guy is 5'11", 190. Boston, 6'3", north of 200. Does that matter? Not particularly. Just you need them to get the right situation and the right draft capital. And I think I'd bet a little bit more on the 6'3" guy getting the draft capital than the 5'11" guy. But if they both get it, you're going to love it. So I will be going with a quarterback who rose a lot in the college football playoffs. That's going to be Trinidad Chambliss. And that will round out the first round. This senior quarterback did not play D1 ball previously at Ferris State. So we really just have the one season of data that I feel like is really projectable, right? And it was a great season, right? We're looking at the touchdown to interception ratio again in the SEC, 22-3. 527 rushing yards when that counts sacks being subtracted from that. This guy has that potential to be that Qnami code quarterback. 15% pressure to sack rate. You never hate to see that be a little bit lower, but that's about 5% lower than Simpson was. So the guy seems to, he has reps, not at the highest level, and he seems to just have a little bit of that it factor. If he comes to the NFL and he sits till the bye week and kind of comes in and takes over, I think, if he gets into the right spot, end of the first round draft capital, I could see kind of a Jackson Dart sort of, storyline next year, trajectory next year, take him somewhere late first, doesn't start off the bat, comes in after the bye week, rushes all over the place, and really, really just ascends in dynasty value. So it's definitely an upside swing, and there's a chance that he's not drafted in the first round, and then maybe I'm starting to kind of regret this pick. But also, when we look at the early second round this year, at least right now, there's not anybody I feel incredible about. So there's some tight ends I like. There's some RBs that I'm fine with, but it's going to get a little murkier after this point. So that being said, let's kind of have JP first just reply if you have anything to add about Chambliss there, and then just kind of give me your overall feeling about this first round really at this point, JP, and then David.
Yeah, Chambliss only had 3 picks in the regular season. I thought that was just crazy for a first-time SEC starter. But the first round, I'm not feeling too bad about it. The more I've kind of dove into it, I really do like Jonah Coleman and Sadiq. And if Emmett Johnson gets his draft capital, Ty Simpson's, does get that first round capital. There's a lot of ifs still for me, but I think that it could be a good first round up to, the 110, 111. We'll have to see if Chambliss does, in fact, get into this draft class because he's suing the NCAA. But I don't think it's as bad as it's really been made out to be. I think people are going to get rookie fever, so I think you're going to want to hold those picks unless you get a deal that you like. So yeah, I'm not hating it, to be honest, right now, the first round at least.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's the safety falls off a little earlier than we would like. like the floor. But I still think there's a lot of talent, and I think the positional distribution, at least in our first round, seems pretty accurate. 3 quarterbacks, 3 running backs, 5 receivers, a tight end. I think that's pretty historically accurate. So if these guys all get the draft capital we want, this could end up being a decent first round.
Is it crazy to think, though, that we see Chambliss go in the second, Concepcion go in the second, and Emmett Johnson in the fourth, and then all of a sudden we really have an end of the first that we're not incredibly excited about? Maybe we're pushing another tight end in there. Maybe we're still just drafting some of these same guys, but with a lot less value floor. I mean, so I guess my question based off of that, because you, David, for our podcast audience, nodded saying it's not crazy to think that. Do we feel like this draft class is underpriced right now from your just knowledge of where picks are in the streets end of the first round? Do you feel like the risk is kind of baked into the price already, or is it kind of underpriced? I'll ask David first, then JP.
I haven't sent offers for late firsts in the last few weeks, to be fair, but I feel like it's probably about correctly priced. I'm not trying to buy these picks right now because there's a lot of uncertainty. I don't mind trying to send out some offers for veterans, but I'm also fine sitting on them. This time of year is really awkward to sell picks because you want to wait for them to mature in value, but you also are bored right now. At least I'm bored, so I'm certain I will send some offers out before too long. But yeah, right now I'd have to say they're about fair. But again, that's not the most experienced perspective.
I think you make a good point, Justin. The safety between 109 and 111, somewhere in there, I think is going to fall off after the NFL draft. But once we get the combine and eyes and more information on these players, that's when the rookie fever, I think, will kick in even before the NFL draft. So I think that might be the time to sell your 111s, 112s, maybe 110 even. Because, yeah, we never know. I mean, Luther Burden was going 108 last year before he went to the second round with the Bears. So a lot can definitely change, and I think the safety is pretty shaky there in the last 4 or so picks of the first round.
All right, so moving on to the second round with the 201, it's going to end up being JP picking first here. And JP, walk us through your thought process here and who you're going with.
Yeah, I mean, with our 1.75 tight end premium, I'm going to take a tight end here, and it's a tight end that I've been crushing on pretty hard lately. I liked him, and I've just continued to push him more and more up, and that's Vanderbilt tight end Eli Stowers. So he has a very interesting journey. He went to Texas A&M as a quarterback recruit, 4-star quarterback recruit in 2021. He switched to tight end at New Mexico State in 2023 after losing a quarterback battle to Diego Pavia. Very, very interesting right there. He had a great year as a first tight end in New Mexico State, and then he had 1,400 yards in 2 seasons in the SEC. So this is somebody that's also on Bruce Feldman's freaks list. I think he's going to kill it at the combine. His career yards per route run is 2.42, which is higher than Trey McBride's, Colston Loveland, Kyle Pitts, and Tucker Kraft's in college. So, yeah, I think as a receiving tight end, the sky's kind of the limit for that kind of production profile with the size and athleticism at 6'4", 235. He might be a guy who's not going to line up in line a lot. Like, that's kind of what his profile is suggesting. But you give me kind of the Evan Ingram, you're more of a receiving tight end. And I don't know, I think we could be pretty happy with that. I just think that him not being a tight end for that long, and also he's a very smart player. He won the academic Heisman, which is called the William V. Campbell Award. So I think this is a bright player that has a bright future. So in a tight end premium league, I would love to take him somewhere in the early second round.
Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see where these tight ends go, because I think draft capital is becoming more important. It used to not matter a whole lot for tight end. It seems that we're trending back towards it mattering. But more important is landing spot. Are you in an offense that is going to use you? Are you going to be a top 2 or 3 target earner on your team? Those are all very important things for the tight end. So I think this class will kind of shake itself out in that respect. And I do like Eli Stowers. I have him currently as my tight end 3, but it's very close with my tight end 2, who is Michael Trigg out of Baylor, and that's who I'm going to select here at the 202. He is an interesting player in different ways. He's always been a tight end, but he did have some basketball scholarship offers out of high school. So different kind of athlete, but still we love to see that. We love our basketball playing tight ends. Second in the nation in targets among tight ends, second in the nation in missed tackles forced among tight ends. 0.34 missed tackles forced per attempt. That's pretty darn good. He will be at the 2026 Senior Bowl. Really interested to see how he performs there. Hopefully we find out that he can at least hold up as a blocker. I think that's my biggest concern is how often is he going to be on the field? Is he just going to have to mostly be kind of a tight end who really plays more power slot, or is he going to be able to play some tight end? If he can play some tight end, he's got a huge upside. If we're really concerned about how long he can be on the field, on running downs and stuff, then maybe I'll have to rethink how high I have him. Just some great highlight catches, though. Ton of fun to watch.
Yeah, those 2 tight end picks there, absolutely love them. I could see one of them easily slipping into the first round of tight end premium drafts. And honestly, your guess is as good as mine. I think they're both phenomenal profiles, just going to depend on the landing spot. That's that. After that, I think it just drops off into who is the next best running back available. And I don't really know the answer to that question. If you asked me last offseason, I would have said that this guy is going to be a first round rookie pick next year. So getting him at the 203 here last year, Justin would be pretty happy. It's going to be the ultra athletic Nittany Lion, Penn State running back Nich Singleton. So Singleton, he's 6 foot, 224, made the 247 Sports Freaks list, 5-star high school recruit, just an athlete. This is a guy that I think could Quinshawn Judkins it at the combine and very easily be a first round fantasy running back still. Kind of these 3 guys here, I think all could find a way to sneak into the first round potentially. He had a bad year. Every single Penn State player had a bad year. And I'm just going to go ahead and close my eyes. I'm going to ignore it. I mean, not entirely, because I'd still be taking him in the first round if I was really ignoring it. But at this point where everybody has warts on their profile, maybe was a backup running back to somebody else, or, played at a small school, or same exact situation we're talking about here. I'm just going to go with the guy that I think could get second round NFL draft capital still, potentially, and could really, really rise in value with the combine.
Yeah, I think the combine is going to do wonders for him. He's just going to jump out of the gym there. Well, the field. They don't run in a gym. But yeah, Penn State players are notorious for that anyways. And he's just kind of next level. So I don't blame you. The running back that I think also could go in the second round is Notre Dame Jadarian Price. Another player I've been rising on lately. Looking at his prospect profile, his .25 missed tackles forced per attempt is a good number. Also, in 2025, he had .21 10-plus yard runs per attempt, which from my count of other players that I've looked at so far, that's the best number in the entire class. So he's creating explosives. And I didn't know this until recently that he had torn his Achilles in the summer of 2022 coming into his freshman year. So I think we pointed out previously that his early college production wasn't that great. And then Jeremiyah Love comes in after he's recovered from this torn Achilles. So it's been a tough road for him to get production. But even despite that, the advanced numbers do look great for him. I mean, even his yards after contact per attempt on his career is 4.28. I mean, you don't see a lot of running backs at 4+. So that's also really, really good. And I did not like him a ton as a pass catcher before. This year, he did take a step forward in that department from a yards per route run perspective. His career is just 0.81, but this year he bumped it up to 1.23. So it's trending in the right direction. I also hear that a lot of NFL scouts have him as their RB2. So that is to be determined. There's running backs I like in the class more for fantasy and their projection, but he definitely could be the second running back drafted in this class. And if I got him at 204, I'd be pretty stoked. I'm really curious how he's going to do the combine. People say he's very explosive. And like I said, the 10+ yard runs that he had a lot of them. So he might really be a big riser after the NFL combine as well. So honestly, I think he could be one of the players that jumps up into our first round, in a couple months after the combine, maybe even after the NFL draft. So I love the value of him here at 204.
We feel good about Coleman. We like Coleman and Emmett Johnson. That's why we have them in the first. But I think Singleton and Price both have a chance to be RB2. I think the guy I'm going to take here does as well. And this is going to be interesting. We're going to have 6 running backs off the board and 4 different teams representing these running backs. I'm going to take another player we've already taken a teammate of. That's going to be Penn State running back Kaytron Allen. He came to Penn State the same year as Nich Singleton. So their production was alongside each other. Allen over 800 rushing yards all 4 seasons, over 1,000 each of the last 2. Efficiency numbers are not elite, but somewhere between average and slightly above average. Everything except yards per out run. On his career, 0.74, not awful. especially when you consider he's paired next to Nich Singleton for his whole career, who actually is a pretty good pass catcher. So I'm wondering if with Kaytron Allen, it's more of just they never really needed to ask him to do it. Hopefully he's at least a good enough receiver to not be a liability, because his rushing stats, his production over the time in the Big Ten at Penn State, it's been, I mean, you can pretty much call it elite production, 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns. I know Justin said everyone at Penn State struggled this year. Kaytron Allen did not. He still had a pretty darn good season, even through the struggles, which really is kind of more impressive than the other years where he was playing well alongside everybody else who was playing well. Last thing I'll say about him, Senior Bowl invitee, he will be there, I believe. Probably going to be the best running back there anyway, so hopefully he looks like it on the field as well. Be interesting to see how he looks in the pass catching drills for sure.
Yeah, he definitely is a guy who, I mean, what are we talking about? Over twice the yards that Singleton had. I'm definitely making a bet on the athleticism and what that will do, but I might be making the wrong bet by taking Singleton over Allen at this point. I'm only going to have one rookie draft that's before the NFL draft, and I'll probably do a startup or two before and have to make maybe some decisions. But for the most part, I will be lucky enough to be able to act off what the NFL tells me. And it certainly could be that Allen should be drafted above Singleton in our fantasy drafts. And I'll be happy to admit that if that is the case. I'll be taking a running back from BYU, LJ Martin. I know that's 4 RBs in a row, and that is because it's kind of the end of a tier for me at running back. And it's just running backs that I think can make it in the NFL, like guys that I think could be a team's RB1 or at least 1A. They're him enough. Like, that's who I really want to be hammering once I'm past first round running back, first round wide receivers, first round quarterbacks, first round tight ends, guys that I think have good shot at day 2 capital. So round 2 or 3 of the NFL draft, which isn't a lock for LJ Martin, but it's definitely in the realm of possibilities. That's the direction I want to go. This is a guy who had 1,300 yards and 12 touchdowns and 255 more yards on 36 receptions. His missed tackles force 0.23, so about every 4th carry he is making you miss, adding 3.75 yards after contact. He's just a good running back, explosive enough, and he can carry the rock, right? I like to see guys that can do it, that can really, get 240, 250. We're looking at almost 280 touches between rushes and receptions. And that's just what I want at this point. That's what I'm looking for. So definitely the way I'm looking to go when it's in the same tier-ish as cross-positional players. I'll always lean running back at this point.
Yeah, sad to see you take him before me because I agree. It's the end of a tier at the running back position for me. I really like him a lot. He kind of checks all the advanced analytic boxes for me. There's no glaring hole. The yards per route run isn't phenomenal, but it was trending in the right direction for a player who's only coming out after his junior year. So I think there's still upside there, and I think that's a great pick. Now I'm going to go with another tight end here, and that's going to be Ohio State Max Klare. Kind of like I said with Jadarian Price, but the tight end position here. I think Max Klare's got a really good shot to be the second tight end drafted in this class. Now the 2 tight ends we drafted prior, I think just have better receiving profiles overall, so that's why I'm not taking him ahead of them at this moment in time. But after it was his 3rd college, so he actually redshirted his first year, didn't play. So he only played actually 2 seasons at Purdue before transferring over to Ohio State. And he was proven to be a really good receiving tight end over at Purdue. I saw coming into this year that people were saying, is Max Klare or is Kenyon Sadiq the tight end 1 for this year? He went over to Ohio State. His receiving production dropped off a little bit because, of course, it did when you're playing alongside Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith, who might be one of the best wide receiver prospects we've ever seen, at least in the last decade or so. But I've heard he's been lauded for his movement ability as a receiving tight end. He took a step forward as a blocker at Ohio State from all the reports that I've seen and scouting reports. So I think that he really could be a first-round tight end potentially. I feel very good about him going in the 2nd round. So I think that his stock could rise. I'm interested to see what he weighs in at the combine because he was lighter at Purdue and was very good as a receiver. Then he gained like 15 to 20 pounds at Ohio State to be a better blocker. So interesting to see if he'll be closer to 230 or if he will be at like 245 where he's showing now.
Yeah, definitely want to see hopefully over 240, but certainly at least mid 230s. If you're lighter than that, it's tough to be a tight end in the NFL. I really hoped Max Klare would return to Ohio State for another season. I think he would have had an opportunity to put up big numbers there. Just like when we talked about Carnell Tate, that's a crowded room. They were a very slow-paced offense. There's not a lot of yards to go around. I was a little disappointed as a fan to start, but he started to work his way into the offense, and you could see like when he was called upon, he did perform pretty darn well. I do think he has a chance to be tied into in this class. I prefer Stowers and Trigg just because I like to lean on production a little bit more than film, because I don't really watch film. So I watch these guys play, but I don't know. When we're talking about watching film, I'm thinking like actually studying the plays and stuff. I've watched them play, but I'm certainly not a film guy. Anyways, enough on me. Let's talk about another player, and I'm going to take another newly minted national champion, Elijah Sarratt, wide receiver out of Indiana. He is a 4-year player, first year at St. Francis, which I don't know if it's community college or D3 or what. Then he transferred to James Madison, followed Curt Cignetti over to Indiana, almost said Iowa. And he's looked like a pretty darn good player. I don't think he's going to be an elite receiver. I don't think he's someone you're going to have to start. I think he's going to be a quality flex option, and I think he's going to be a better pro than fantasy player, which is a fantasy draft, so we don't love to hear that. We're also at the 208, so I think you're picking a guy who I think is going to be a starter. He's going to be on the field a lot. He's going to have some down weeks, but he's going to have some blow up weeks, and I think he's a good player. He's going to play mostly outside, over 3.2 yards per out run versus man, which is good when you're talking about outside receivers. Probably going to play on the line of scrimmage. He's a good blocker. He does a lot of the NFL things that coaches like in receivers well. So I think he's going to be a good pro.
And he would be the guy I would take next. I'd penciled him in at 209 just because I do feel like he has a very high floor. And congrats on that national championship as well. At this point, I'd love to go running back. I don't feel like there's anybody. I'm drafting at the top of the tier if I go running back. It's just my process is end of the second is running back, tight end, quarterback. I'd love to go tight end, but I'm drafting at the top of the tier, and I don't think that's the way to go. I'd love to go QB. Same thing. I'm drafting at the top of a tier that I don't feel like is well valued here in the second. So unfortunately, it's pushing me to go wide receiver, and I'm going to go Alabama wide receiver Germie Bernard. So this is a guy that I don't love some of his advanced metrics, namely his yards per out run sitting at 1.9 on his career, but 1.7 this year. I know part of that is JP kind of mentioned just offensively as a whole, Alabama kind of had some, struggles stemming with the rushing game, and that can lead to inefficiencies from in other areas of the offense. But the counting numbers aren't bad. 862 yards, 7 touchdowns. Not a guy that really did a lot from a contested catch standpoint. 35.7%. If he comes in at really 5'11" and that 200 pounds, he might be kind of put into a slot role. It's really going to depend on that draft capital. I've seen him mocked sporadically, early second, and seen people speculate he could go in the first round of the NFL draft, but there is not the expectation that he goes in the first round of the NFL draft. Like he could. Honestly, people have said Sarratt could as well, right? It's always possible an NFL team just falls in love with him and takes him at the 30th, 29th, 31st, something like that, right? But at the end of the day, I lean into teams that know how to produce NFL talent. Alabama knows how to produce NFL talent. So if it's an Ohio State, an LSU, an Alabama wide receiver, I'm just going to give them a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt and trust that they're going to come in knowing how to do the things that, you don't see on the stat sheet that actually matter for NFL success.
Yeah, Germie Bernard, kind of like you said with Boston. I mean, he was playing behind Jalen Polk and Roma Dunze and Jalen McMillan. So early on, he learned behind some really good players. And at Alabama, he was touted as a great leader. They used him on rushing attempts as well. So he's a good player in space with the ball in his hands. Here, he could go in the first round as well. I don't think he will, but I think he's got a good chance of being top 40. So if he goes top 40, you'd be pretty happy with this pick here. The receiver that I'm going to go with is Omar Cooper of Indiana. Congratulations again on the national championship. And gosh, this guy is just a beast after the catch. His missed tackles forced per attempt, I just calculated after the national championship here because PFF posted their numbers. He's at 0.39. That's absurd. He has 27 missed tackles forced this season. He's had some real highlight catches where he's high pointing the ball. The one touchdown against Penn State, the game winner, was ridiculous. So from what I've seen, his ball skills are very impressive to go along with that missed tackles forced per attempt. And he's not a player. Sometimes you see these high missed tackles forced and you're like, okay, this guy's just getting manufactured, these little screen passes and whatnot, which that was the first play of the national championship for Indiana was a screen pass to him. But he is a 12.5 ADOT on his career. So he's not just getting these dink and dunk, manufactured touches. Personally, I think he is one of my favorite wide receivers in this class. I think he has a chance to be wide receiver 6. I don't know if it'll happen, but I just think he's phenomenal. A 2.47 yards per route run is a strong number as well. This year, he had 83.5% slot rate. At first, I was like, okay, that's kind of concerning. But then you look at his career, and it's only at 46.7. So, and today I saw him being the motion flanker player a ton. So, I don't know. I just think that he's a really well-rounded wide receiver that really has strengths to his game. And I think he's going to go round 2 personally. And I'm very interested to see how he runs at the combine as well. But I love this player.
Yeah, I'm a big fan, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but he still has to make his decision official, right? So he still technically could go back to school.
Yeah, he still could technically.
So just be on the lookout for that. I think he's going to go pro as well. I kind of think he has the highest ceiling of this group that we've talked about, these 3 last wide receivers. I just have a lot more confidence in Sarratt as a pro. That's why I chose him. This is also a weird spot in the draft because I'm going to keep this wide receiver run going, but I also want to caveat that by saying I don't think this is how any of us like to roster construct or build. The back end of the second, we're typically looking for running backs, maybe tight ends, maybe quarterbacks that have a shot. This is just how things are falling right now, and I really like Chris Bell, Louisville wide receiver. I feel like at this spot in the draft, his talent's too good to pass up. He was pretty much a consensus tier 2 wide receiver in this class for most people until unfortunately he tore his ACL a little over a month ago. Reports are it was a clean tear. Surgeries happened a little over a month ago as well. You figure 9 to 12 months, that got a shot to play early on in the season. So I don't, it's hard to project. Every ACL is different. Every recovery is different. We get a little spoiled seeing some of these guys come back so quickly. And every now and then we're reminded when a guy takes, closer to a year, maybe a little over. If he comes back, it was a clean tear. If he comes back and looks good, and he was a first-round talent, you're getting him at the end of the second here. I think this is one of those picks that has a chance to be a steal. Also could be burning a pick. I mean, you're drafting a guy with a torn ACL. You don't love that, but his upside is huge. The one major negative I want to say on him, based on PFF's data, he had 1 target on the left side of the field this season. 1 target on the left side of the field. That's a little scary to me.
That is an interesting statistic for sure. Yeah, I believe it was the 206 is where you took Bell in our last mock before he tore his ACL. And yeah, absolutely love the value there. I was debating between him and Bernard at the 209. The ACL questions just kind of had me steering towards being more conservative there. So love your pick. Wrapping up the second round, I'm going to go with I feel like it's going to have to go with my process. Don't like the tight end landscape just yet. Again, I feel like we've kind of had a tier break. Quarterback still, they might end up going here if they get the draft capital, the guys that were drafted in the 3rd round, or a guy that didn't get drafted even potentially. But I don't know that I believe in any of them. So I'm going back to the running back and I'm going to go Demond Claiborne, running back from Wake Forest. At this point, it's just going to be my process. So this is what David was talking about, right? We want to hammer people that we think have a realistic chance to hit our fantasy football lineup. And wide receivers past a certain range probably aren't going to hit our lineups, right? Of course, there's always the possibility you hit on a Puka Nacua, and you can always take those swings. And I don't hate doing so, but I don't love doing it at the end of the second. I love taking those in the 3rd and 4th if I am doing it. So I'm going to go with a running back who I just think has shown some decent ability. The advanced metrics are not great from a reception standpoint. 0.66 yards per hour this year, but it's about 1 on his career. So can do enough through the air, 5'10", 195. I just think this is the type of guy that could really be a great part of a committee, and the type of guy who has the skill set to, if he's part of a committee and he gets enough passing down, could really just be like a RB2, 3 type of guy that when he gets an injury in that committee could really hit my lineup really well. I don't view this guy quite as like a real high ceiling play. I don't really view him working his way up where the other guys are. And I don't think he's got a 1st round trajectory if he kills the combine, but I think he's a solid running back. And at this point, I'm really just looking to take a solid running back with my picks.
Yeah, taking just RB8 at this point is, I think it's just great process, whoever that is going to be at that point in time. But to go ahead and jump into the 3rd round here, I'm going to take a tight end that I like here again. I guess I'm taking, 3 tight ends in my last 5 4 picks. I like this tight end class. I think it's a pretty good tight end class. I'm going to take Justin Joly out of North Carolina State. He's been the advanced metrics on him are some that I really like. The contested catch rate of 68%. It's better than all 4 of the tight ends that we've drafted here before. For a guy who's 6'3" is what he's listed at. But I've heard that he has nearly 33-inch arms, which kind of would make up for that. There's some of these guys have 31.5-inch arms that are 6'5". So we'll see on that. The missed tackles force per attempt is at 0.28 on his career. The only player higher in this draft class is Michael Trigg at 0.29, just a touch above him there. So I think as a receiving tight end, he's going to be very interesting. He converted from being a wide receiver to a tight end. So I'm not sure if he's going to be the traditional inline tight end. That's not what I believe about him. But as a receiving tight end at this point in the draft that has pretty good metrics and almost 2,000 career receiving yards, I like taking him at this point in the draft.
Yeah, he's an interesting one for sure. I need to look a little bit more into him, but I've seen a lot of people starting to hype him up a little bit as just kind of an athletic freak dart throw tight end. I guess finding out he was a receiver makes sense. From what I've seen him play, he looks pretty fluid out there. So that's definitely a good pick. I'm going to continue being weird in this draft. I've only taken 1 running back, which is weird to me. This is normally where I'd be hammering them. I'm going to go wide receiver again because I think this guy should be mentioned. UConn wide receiver Skyler Bell. Admittedly, is a little small, 5th-year player, not a big school, not a profile we love. He had 141 targets, over 1,200 yards. He tied with Makai Lemon for the lead in the class in yards per out run this year. That's something we love to see. Over 3 yards per out run versus both man and zone. So I think I'm starting to see him get a little bit of hype as a sleeper. I think he's kind of on that Kyle Williams trajectory. Very different kinds of players, mind you. Don't think I'm comparing them as players, but just you didn't know a whole lot about them. At least I didn't know a whole lot about them going into the offseason, and they started to get steamed pretty quickly. And I think Kyle Williams ended up going in the back end of most second rounds that I was drafting in. I wouldn't be shocked if that happens to Skyler Bell. I also wouldn't be shocked if he goes in the 7th round and, we're talking about him as maybe a couple bucks in fab if you have a taxi spot. Just because he's 6 foot, $185, played at UConn. He's a 5th-year player, did a lot of work behind the line of scrimmage, but did a lot of work in the other parts of the field too. He was just like that offense. He was their guy. So love to see the production. Definitely some red flags though.
I don't think Kyle Williams, I understand where you're going from. You're going from the hype, the trajectory, and where he ended up being drafted in rookie drafts. Not a name people want to hear to inspire confidence with. I hope he does not follow the 1st round NFL production trajectory of that as well. But you love to see the 3 yards per route run against both coverages. Like that is, if that's a 1st round NFL pick that has that, like we're talking about, that guy's a top 5 rookie pick, right? It's incredible production. So you absolutely do love to see that. I'm going to go back to the running back. Well, although, do I get some credit? He did play wide receiver, at least at the start of his career. So maybe get some credit. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to pick Adam Randall, wide receiver from Clemson. JP shared a tweet after I drafted this guy from Dave Klug on X. Just pointing out that, he's 6'2", 230, 240 converted wide receiver to running back, right? That's incredible size. And I saw some comments, along that line that it's like Cordero Patterson, like plus 20 pounds. He's got like a little bit size on Patterson, right? Like where he was coming out. So it's always tantalizing, right? That converted wide receiver to running back. If somebody is able to do it well and they use them well, right, we can see incredible fantasy success, right? We saw it from Antonio Gibson for a couple of years. And this is always something that we draft highly. So at the very least, I think he's a guy that I'm going to want to be drafting in the 3rd rounds of my rookie drafts, moving on from him in some situations, because I think he'll inevitably get some training camp buzz just based off of the size when you see him catching balls out of the backfield at practice. So it's something that I don't know if it'll work out in the NFL. You never know with these players. I do like his, efficiency. We're at about that 1 yard per out run coming out of the backfield. So, it's not quite, jaw-dropping, but I think he's going to be a competent NFL player, and he's got the size for it, for sure.
I look for wherever Arthur Smith lands. His next Kenneth Gainwell, his Cordero Patterson. So
thank God my Lions avoided Arthur Smith. I've never been so happy in all my life.
He's the fantasy killer. He killed Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. The list is endless at this point. But yeah, definitely an interesting player. The Tyrone Tracy, Antonio Gibson track, that's been pretty good for fantasy in short spurts. But that's what we're looking at. We're looking at short spurts of value in Dynasty. But looking at the 304, I'm going to take who I think is going to be a QB4. That's to be determined, but mine is going to be Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU. I was reading up more about him, and in training camp, it was reported that he suffered an abdominal injury. Now, what I'm reading now, that the season's over and they're open to giving out more information, is that he had an abdominal tear that he was playing through this year. And when you look at this season compared to last, it makes a lot of sense because he had 1,921 yards this year to 12 touchdowns, 5 INTs, but the season before he had 3,740 yards and 26 touchdowns. So there's a big difference. And the pressure to sack rate almost doubled. It was at 10.6 in 2024, 19.0 this year. So, I think that NFL evaluators, they saw him last year and they're like, oh, he could potentially be a first-round pick. I don't know if they're going to lean more on, the play this year and the size is not quite there, or if they're going to say, screw it, we're going to throw this year out the window, like you said with Nich Singleton, and let's rely on what we saw when we know he was healthy and the environment was there. He also lost 4 of his offensive linemen this year to the NFL draft, so I think that also probably played a part of it. The running game also was crap. I love Caden Durham there, but he did not do a whole lot, unfortunately. And also, I just took account of how many NFL teams that I would like to see him drafted to, and I'm at about 10. Even like the Cardinals behind Jacoby Brissett, the Rams behind Stafford, even situations like that, I'd be happy. The Panthers behind Bryce, and then there's like 6-7 teams that don't have a quarterback at all, like Steelers, Browns, Jets. So I think that a third of the NFL teams that I'd be happy to see him on, and what I saw last year, I do think that we could see him rise to being worth a second-round pick, at least at some point. Because I do think a team's going to give him a chance. Whether it's this year, next year, I think we're going to see him starting some games.
The Steelers have Will Howard, thank you. I'm just kidding. This is the time of the draft where you should be targeting players like this. He's an upside quarterback who, hey, if he ever gets the chance to try and start for an extended period of time, you got a really nice sell window. Even if he only has one spot start, you can probably at least get your third back. So I think this is a great pick for Nussmeier. I think there's a handful of other quarterbacks that should probably end up going late second into the third. It's just such a weird draft. I don't know who they're going to be. So that's not the direction I'm going to go here, but I think there's a few guys you could take here still at that position. Personally, I'm going to go back to the well at running back finally. Something I think you should do often in the third round here. It's just a weird running back class too. We're still learning about the back end of this class because so many guys went back that we thought were going to be these third round running backs. I'm going to go with Oklahoma running back Jaydn Ott. And if you hear that name and paired with Oklahoma running back, you might be a little confused. He did finish his career there. He spent most of this year injured, spent his first 3 years at Cal, spent his third year also somewhat injured, unfortunately. But boy, his first 2 seasons, did he look the part. 2,200 yards, 20 touchdowns, 72 receptions over 500 yards. And, efficiency metrics were solid, about missed tackle forced on one out of every 4 attempts, 3.3 yards after contact per attempt, almost 1 yards per out run. Really, it's just the 2 seasons of injuries back to back that's really concerning. One was an ankle, though. One was a shoulder, so they're not compounding injuries or anything. Big thing for him, he's going to be at the Senior Bowl this year, or this week, or next week. Anyways, he's going to be at the Senior Bowl. If he looks healthy and he looks the part, he could really help his stock, I think. He's one of the players I think could help his stock the most. So, very interesting player, but very concerning injury history.
Early breakout age, right? Young breakout. Concerned about the injuries, right? Is he injury prone, or was he just injured for a bit, right? If the answer was he was just injured for a bit, definitely could see him returning some value and getting you some spot starts. So love that as a third round running back. I'm either taking running back, QB, tight end at this point. This is past the point where I'm even entertaining wide receiver, really. And it's going to be QB for me. And I'm going to take Drew Allar from Penn State. Between the combination of having a horrible start to the season and a broken ankle in October, right, where Penn State was just floundering already when that happened. It's going to be interesting to see what the NFL does to, forgive him. I'm not sure how healthy he will be in the pre-draft process, if he's going to be able to really do much, have a pro day, if he'll be ready at combine time, anything. But it's going to be tough to see and really project, right? While it's the hope, right, that the NFL kind of forgives. If he goes in the second or third round of an NFL draft, if someone says that's my guy based off of what they saw before, because last offseason we had some hype for this guy, right? If he had come out in last year's class, he'd have been a guy we were interested in drafting. So he definitely has the potential to, someday potentially accrue value, be worth a second, right? And I think really that's what we're mostly hoping for process-wise in the third. So yeah, it's a bad season for all Penn State players, right? It was cut short. He had a decent body of work for his career, and I think NFL teams, there's definitely a chance that they give him a shot, and that, much like JP said with Nussmeier, that Allar is starting at some games in the next 2 years in the NFL.
Something that the NFL really likes is starts. He's got the experience. He's played some games as a freshman all the way up to his senior year. And also at 6'5", 235, we saw Will Levis kind of get drafted on the traits in the second round. So I'm not saying Drew Allar is going to go second round, but teams really do value that size, especially at a big program. He had a lot of hype, projected first-round pick potentially last year, and only at 1.2% turnover-worthy play rate on his career is awesome. He's a really interesting prospect, so I actually really like that pick a ton. Now at the 307, I can't even remember who I took. Okay, got it. The 307, I'm going to take TCU wide receiver Eric McAllister. TCU wide receiver, don't love to see that combination recently. I mean, Quentin Johnston has kind of come along here, so hopefully that TCU wide receiver combo can, see a little bit of improvement here with Eric McAllister. He has some very interesting numbers here. Now, if you said Skyler Bell, his yards per route run this season was one of the best, but if you look at career yards per route run, Eric McAllister is second in his entire class behind only Makai Lemon. It's 2.86 is his career yards per route run. Phenomenal number for a guy who's 6'3", 205 pounds. His missed tackles forced per attempt this year was 0.38, one of the best in the entire class as well, and almost 8 yak per reception. I'm seeing a lot of things I really like. I think he's going to garner some hype with over 3,000 receiving yards on his career as well. He's been a consistent producer from his freshman through his senior year. He started his career at Boise for 2 years before he came over to TCU for the last couple of years. I think at this point in the draft, he just stands out to me as the most talented player left on my board. So like we said, wide receiver in this range, don't want to take a ton of shots here, but he's my clear top wide receiver available.
Yeah, it's hard to blame you given the size, the athleticism, the production's there, the efficiency metrics, they all ticks a lot of boxes, but you kind of hit on it for me, man. Big, tall, athletic TCU wide receiver. Just a little scary of a combination there. I think through this process, he could prove us wrong or right. Hard to blame the upside swing there. He's big, he's athletic, and been productive in college. So anywho, I am going to take the last tight end that I feel we're going to be drafting. Obviously, the NFL can change that, and I feel like we miss on tight end more than most, so would not be surprised if somebody else makes the list, but for me, the last tight end on my list that I'm interested in here in these first 36 picks, Tanner Koziol, University of Houston, spent his first 3 seasons at Ball State, last season at Houston. He's a big fella at 6'7", 250. Now, just want you to imagine a 6'7" human being. I know 250 is a big number, normally an okay weight for a tight end. At 6'7", 250, he's a little bit lanky. I'm a little worried about how he is as a blocker. That's just because I haven't seen it, though. You turn on Tanner Koziol, you're not going to watch blocking highlights. It's just not how it goes. But he is a little lanky. It's huge for the red zone, though. He is 6'7", as a tight end. He's got a huge wingspan. I think he led the nation in targets as a tight end, and I believe in receptions as well. So just a highly productive guy. And, I think at worst, he's going to be a guy that you can start as your tight end and just hope he scores a touchdown. Sometimes that's all you need to do at tight end. So happy to get him here at the end of the third.
Yeah, and with you going Koziol there, and I mean, there's one QB that I think is worth entertaining at the end of the third. I'm just going to hammer RB. I know it's really out of left field for me, but I'm going to go Roman Hemby. Played tonight, did not have a great game for the Hoosiers, but had a great season for the Hoosiers. 1,000 rushing yards, 160 receiving yards. I mean, not, the counting numbers are not, absolutely phenomenal or anything, but he's just had a good career. Played at Rutgers previously and put up back-to-back 600-yard seasons alongside Monungai, and was just south of 1,000 his sophomore year. So enough production, enough receiving work. 33, 38, and 40 receptions in his 3 seasons at Rutgers that he was a full-time player. That's what I'm looking for at this point. I'm looking for somebody who, when they get the full workload, they're able to do something with it, right? I don't think Hemby is going to be a day one starter in the NFL. I'm not going to sell you on that he is, right? Just he's a guy that I think has the skill set to, when the other guy in front of him gets injured, and that happens to almost every running back at some point in their career, they get a couple game stretch where I think Hemby can give you the type of value, whether if you need him to be the actual spot starter, fantastic. If not, then maybe you can get a 2-3 swap out of him, right? So really just all I'm looking for, and I think he fits that profile perfectly here.
Yeah, I think he's got a pretty good production profile overall, like him as a receiver as well. So good pick process-wise, and I'm going to stick with that process of taking a running back in Le'Veon Moss out of Texas A&M. He has struggled with injury is kind of the story with this guy. But last year, this year was kind of poor because he was coming off of a torn ACL, MCL. So in 2024, he was looking like he was really having a true breakout. You look at the advanced numbers, he had 4.4 yards after contact per attempt last year before the injury. Phenomenal number. 0.21 missed tackles forced per attempt is solid. And he's also looking at 1.56 yards per route run last year as well. So he was taking these steps forward where he was looking like he might legit be a great running back prospect. Then the injuries happened. He came back this year and he did decent, but then he also suffered another season-ending injury. So it really is the health for this guy. I like the size, 5'11", 210 pounds is kind of that perfect size I'm looking at. Played in the SEC, so he's checking that box. And also he's got home run ability as well. It's funny, I was looking at his speed here. He ran track in college, but also college football 2026 has a speed rating. I almost forgot that you can look at that, but they had him as a 92 speed. So, he's got pretty good speed as well. I'm interested to see what he does at the combine. Just want to see this guy be healthy, and I think he could be a potential riser.
Yeah, I think he's as good a dart throw as any, especially when you talk about a guy who had hype and then injuries kind of derailed him. In this round, that's a great profile to target. He was definitely on my list as well. And I'm just kind of drawing another name from the running back bucket here. We'll see if this guy ends up going in a decent spot in the draft. Jamari Taylor out of Virginia. Start with some red flags. He's a fifth-year player who spent his first 4 years at North Carolina Central. Don't know what level of play that is. He's 5'9", 204 pounds, so a little undersized. I don't think he has breakaway speed either. So I'm not painting the greatest picture here, but he was highly productive throughout his career. Almost 1,000 receiving yards, almost 100 catches, almost 3,000 rushing yards, 37 rushing touchdowns. The ACC regular season rushing champ this year, which does carry some weight, especially when you're only talking about one season against Power 5 competition. He did succeed. Also, if you look at his efficiency metrics between his career and his one season at Virginia, very similar. So I don't think the step up in competition really made him take a step back in production. What you like to see. And the last thing, again, going to the Senior Bowl, got a real shot here to prove that you belong. I know he did that in the ACC this year, but just another opportunity to prove that you belong against high competition. And when you spent your first 4 years against bad competition, you're going to have to answer that question as many times as you can throughout this process. Someone who has some red flags, sure, but he put up some quality production throughout his career. And, he might end up with some spot starts in the NFL. I think he's got a good shot to make a 53.
Yeah, and you love that production. That's 1,000 yards receiving as a running back, right? There's, players that don't even get to 500 in their college career because it's not that common for, running backs to necessarily get those counting statistics. You love to see that kind of materialize. And the last guy, I'm going to go here. Interesting profile. If you look him up, Seth McGowan, you might see a rookie year in 2020 and then his next season in 2024. And that's because this guy ended up spending some time actually in prison. And, we're not here to talk about that really beyond the fact that it will probably impact, NFL teams. Some might take him off. It was a guy and some of his teammates breaking into an apartment is what I'm reading, stealing some stuff. One of the guys was armed. And NFL teams might take this as a character thing, but he seems to be a talented running back on the field. And if I'm going to listen to what NFL teams tell me here. And, there's a chance he doesn't get drafted or he gets drafted in round 6 or 7. And then he's going to be coming off of my board almost entirely. And there's also a chance that somebody falls in love with him and takes him in the 4th round. In which case, he's going to, potentially be a very common 3rd round target for me. But at the end of the day, right, what do you see with the last 4 picks we've taken here? And just this round in general, right? We have 7 running backs, and the last 4 are running backs. That's the direction we're looking to go here. Definitely an interesting draft, a interesting process. David, real quick, you do expect this to be our exact 3rd round after the NFL draft, right? For sure, right?
Well, lock it in. Yeah. No, it's obviously all going to change, right? But I think a lot of the fun of these is to just throw out some names that you're starting to get onto your radar that you like. For me, Skyler Bell was a big one. I've heard a lot of people start to mention him lately, so I was very curious to check him out. Liked a lot of the things I saw. Just wanted to make sure he got a shout out here in the early 3rd. I see a lot of that in this round. I think that's what we should be doing as mock drafters right now.
All right. Well, this has been a long one. If you stuck with us from beginning to end, we really appreciate you. Hit that like, hit that subscribe if you have not yet. Next week will be 2027. Similar process, similar deal. So thank you for joining us for another episode of the Dino Construction Podcast. We hope you found this as helpful for you as it was for us. Please remember to like and subscribe wherever you listen or view. And from all of us here at the Dino Construction Podcast, until next time.